Hello, 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 everybody, everyone, everywhere, to a slightly overdue episode of movies I've seen this month. Today we have one that I had been looking forward to seeing for quite a while, just hadn't gotten around to see it. It was Bladerunner 2049, directed by Denis Villeneuve. Villeneuve? Anyway, Denis is also responsible for directing Arrival, which apparently was a very good movie. I haven't seen it yet, but I do plan on seeing it. Writing credits, sort of surprisingly to me, just two people. Hampton Fancher and Michael Green. Of course, Philip K. Dick is also credited for Do Androids Dream of Electronic Sheep. You all know the backstory on that one, though. No need to get into that. But yeah, for some reasons I'll get into maybe later. It's sort of surprising that there was only two writers on this. I thought there may be like 4 or 5. Okay, maybe not that many, but I do think there's a sort of cluster of ideas that sort of overdo themselves in certain aspects. It's a very confusing statement, but if you keep listening, you'll understand what I mean. Starring the one and only, the Goose, the Gosling, Ryan the Mini Quacker Gosling, the teenage and middle-aged and elderly heartthrob himself, star of Drive, La La Land, and Goosebumps. He did pretty okay in this. I mean, his character wasn't given much to do. Well, his character was given a lot to do, but as far as emotions go, he wasn't given much to do. Also starring, for a brief moment, the wrestler that just won't quit acting. And I don't mean that in a bad way. He's a surprisingly good actor. The old Dave and Buster Batista. And also, I don't know if this is going to be a controversial opinion, probably not, but also Jared Leto, which I'm not a very big fan of. The only movie I can think of where I sort of liked him in was Requiem for a Dream, and that was a million years ago. So, I don't know. A lot of people seem to like him. He's sort of iffy, and his character's really weird in this. And not like personality weird, just the way Mr. Leto portrayed him. It just seemed like a little too over the top. There are a lot of other characters, of course, in this movie, as movies tend to do, have a lot of characters. But a lot of them I wasn't familiar with, or they played a rather minor role. Oh yeah, also Harrison Ford was in this. I forgot. I mean, he was in the trailer and everything, and I was amongst the numbers that were sort of groany when I saw Harrison Ford in this. I sort of wish he wasn't in it. And after seeing the movie, I also sort of wish he wasn't in it. But I'll get on that in a bit. First, let me talk about the visuals, the setting, scenery in this movie. Because I really actually enjoyed the world in this movie quite a lot. Overall, it was a pretty... I don't want to just chastise it out the gate, but it was a pretty sterile and boring movie. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's hard to describe, but it feels like there might be some sort of small, subtle hint at commentary on a attempt at making a perfect future as a human society. Like, that is the ultimate goal. Just a world that is very cut and dry, and we have control over everything, and ideally, at the end of the day, things should just go as planned 100%. And really, that ties into the main character, Ryan Gosling. I think his name is... What is his name? It's a letter. It's like K or something. I'll call him K. That ties into his job, but I'll get into that in a little bit. What I just said about the sterility, if that's a word, and cut and dry and boringness of the world, that all sort of comes into play in the main hub city area that in the area which K works. That's where like the hub of humanity is, and that's where they attempt to have this cut and dry, everything should be by the numbers and work the way it should work environment. But of course, you have your lower city area where everybody goes to relax and unwind and do their debauchery and sin and insanity and all that. So there is the typical place to cut loose in town. And then there is a section of the movie later on where there's also a like scrap junk town, which has a little bit of humanity, but it's not really tied into the main city. So you can say that it's sort of its own separate world. And then, of course, as shown in the previews of the movie, there's also just the orange, dusty remnants of the world of Bladerunner 1, which is, without question, just treated as a wasteland, irrelevant, non-world to the main hub of humanity. So there is a pretty nice contrast there, with the especially with the environments. The sweeping overhead shots of the main city show off just how beautiful it looks, you could say. I mean, of course, it's supposed to be a mildly grim, dystopic future, but it's still, I mean, I don't want to sound super lame, but like the architecture, it's very well done. It looks like a lived-in, inviting city for that environment. It doesn't look like just, it's not obviously a town somebody made up for a movie. A lot of times in movies when they develop towns and things like that, it'll either have just like 4 buildings, and those are all the buildings you need for your plot, or it will just have just 60 trillion buildings just to fill up the scene, and like 5 characters walking around on the streets. So it strikes a nice balance, all while looking realistic for a future fantasy city, of course. A scrap town, I say town loosely, it's more like a warehouse. Like a scrap warehouse is introduced later on, and it's just like a huge wasteland of just metal, scrap, garbage. Just, you can assume it's from just the leftovers of the progress of human society up until the point it's at now. And it's just a really sort of nice gleam into the world and the history of the world as far as this movie goes. They don't really dive into the history of it or anything. It's just a set piece to move the story along. But it's a nice backdrop, and it gives you a little more subtle idea of the world they live in. And overall, it doesn't get bogged down in too much future tech. From what I can recall, at least. The biggest thing is the AI girlfriend, which is a big point for me. Not a great point, but I would say that's the most futuristic thing. Aside from, of course, the, what are they called? I forgot what they're called already. But the robots in the movie. God, what are they called? Replicants. Important I get that right for this review, probably. Most of the future tech is pretty standard, aside from the replicants and AI girlfriend. Flying cars, drones are pretty common, apparently. Bigger, fatter pistols, of course. Data is stored on like crystal spheres, which is just a random, fun, superfluous fantasy thing. But yeah, the setting and environment for this movie were very enjoyable, I'd say. They don't hit you over the head with their visuals and stuff. They don't have any money shots or anything that's like, oh, look at this amazing world we crafted. It's just, it serves as a good backdrop for the story. So, on to the story. Blade Runner 2049 follows the story of the old Gosling. He is a newer model replicant. And apparently it's a pretty standard thing. They have newer model replicants that go and eliminate older model replicants. I can't recall if they have separate names or not, but pretty much the newer model replicants are made by a new guy, a new crazy, eccentric genius, and he made these new replicants that are much better at following directions than the older replicants. So they just follow directions to a T. They're supposed to. So, Gosling, he is a replicant that takes care of older replicants. So we open with him on a mission to bring in a older model replicant played by Mr. Bautista. And this is a really good scene, and I was actually not expecting this scene, and I was hoping there would be more of this kind of stuff, but instead they just went into future city world. But the opening scene starts off with Bautista on a weird little farm where he's by himself, just farming for, I guess he grows and harvests worms, and the area he lives in, there's like no other buildings around it, and he's got three little dome buildings where he does all his work in. So he's by himself, he's being all harmless and everything, and Gosling shows up, and he's here to take him in. So he breaks into the dude's house and sits on a chair, and he's all cool, and he waits for Batista to come in. He's like, "Nice farm," and they have some back and forth, and some discussion, some hint dropping for the story happens. I know I won't give away every detail, but they end up in a fight, which is shown briefly in the trailer. And yeah, I don't want to give too much away about the scene, but the fight concludes, and Batista drops some hinty dialogue that gets Gosling on a sort of breadcrumb detective trail, which is a really cool aspect of the movie, actually. For a nice chunk of it, up until maybe a little bit before the halfway point, it's actually a pretty cool detective sort of styled movie, where Gosling, as this future super smart robot, is following a trail of clues to discover and unearth a secret. Not unearth, that's like archaeological stuff. To discover and unearth a secret of sorts that he has become privy to. So he finds a couple clues along the farmhouse, which lead him back to headquarters to turn in his report. And in addition to his report, he turns into his human supervisor this information that he has picked up, and it's a big deal. His boss has a mini breakdown, does a little backstory lore dropping in the form of a angrily inspired rant about how the world is built upon a wall that separates humans from robots. And then the camera cuts to Gosling, which he's like in replicants and tools, and camera cuts to Gosling, and he's just sitting there emotionless. The movie does that kind of stuff sort of a lot, which was kind of funny to me. It's always funny when directors ham-fist stuff like that. She's yelling like, "Humans are different than robots," and then cuts to Gosling being emotionless. Anyway, so they do a little societal commentary, movie history backdrop that way to give us a little hint of the state of relations between humans and replicants. So anyway, she says, "Take care of this. Find out what this means. Take care of this business now." So he goes on his cool little detective journey, and that's when he runs into evil genius. I don't want to say evil, but I'll say evil. He's the antagonist of the movie. Clearly he's evil. He runs into evil genius's assistant, who is also a replicant, and they hint at each other's sort of, I don't know, it's sort of weird. It's a grasp for humanity while also being clear signs of humanity. Like, for example, a small scene. He's going to get information about an older model replicant, and he's talking to the evil mastermind's assistant, and she goes on a small side tangent, talking about a retired officer, a replicant or something, and says that she was always interested in Deckard, the Harrison Ford. It's like she was always asking him questions about his personal life and stuff that's not really necessary. And that's how you can tell when one person likes each other. They waste their time on how meaningless questions, just so they can get to know the other person, and the other person feels good in response to being asked questions, because everyone likes to talk about themselves. And then, like, 3 seconds later, she looks at Gosling and she asks him, I forget the question, but it's like, so what do you do for fun? Or something like that. And it's like, all right, we get it. She's trying to be human. But at the same time, I mean, she is, like, effectively being human. But oh well. Maybe the timing was awkward on purpose to show that a replicant is a goober. But I know a lot of people that would act exactly that same way in a real life situation. So, you're more human than you think, replicants. Give yourself credit. So there's a lot of scenes like that. Not as drawn out and blunt as that. But, of course, this is a sci-fi movie dealing with robots and AI and all that. So, it's hard not to touch on the what makes humans different from artificial intelligence. And that is a pretty common theme in this movie. It's touched on every now and then. And this is where we start getting our first real tastes of it, after he is sent on his own to do his detective work. So after his questions and sort of interrogation of the assistant, he makes his way back home. And this is when we are introduced to one of the goofiest characters for me. Not the character itself isn't goofy, just the concept of it is goofy. But the AI girlfriend. And to clarify, you see in the trailer, he's got a girlfriend. You see in the trailer the big advertisement for Joy. Joy is the AI's name. And in the movie, we see a lot of advertisements for Joy before we see the character of Joy. So our first exposure to Joy is an AI female companion that boasts she's everything you need for the day, to get you through the day. She knows exactly what you want. So then we get to Gosling's home scene, and there is AI girlfriend waiting for him. And for me, this just made it immediately weird and awkward. But I can see from the movie standpoint, they were trying to probably, I mean, I wasn't there when they were directing. Believe it or not, I wasn't there when they were directing this movie. Anyway, I can only assume they meant it as another struggle for Gosling to have another semblance of being human. So he has dinner with his AI girlfriend. She can project herself as a hologram, so he has a body to talk to, but it is a hologram, so they can't touch each other. And they get intimate a lot in this movie. And when I say intimate, I don't mean doinking. I mean, they like try to hug and dance and kiss and stuff, and it's really, I don't know, it was just awkward. It was just weird. And I sort of totally get the standpoint of Gosling doesn't know any better. He thinks no human girl will like him because he's a replicant, so he's settling for AI. But it's very clear he is actually really in love with the AI, with Joy. And not even from a personal, me just finding that situation weird standpoint, but I can't understand how he as a character could fall in love with AI when every day he walks to work, he probably sees 4 advertisements for his girlfriend on hologram billboards saying, I can give you everything you want. I'm exactly what you need at the end of your day. Like, how do you see all those advertisements and then go home to that and be like, this is the love of my life? And I don't know. Maybe it's supposed to illustrate some big disconnect with him. He was lost on me. I'm a dummy. The only good thing, really, it's weird saying good thing, but the best thing I got out of that character was a very large addition to Gosling's overall character of being completely pathetic, sad, and depressing, which was probably the biggest surprise for me. I was not expecting Gosling's character to be 100% pathetic, and not like in a whiny, oh, woe is me sort of way, but like nothing good ever happens to this guy. And once again, I don't mean like he gets a bucket of paint dropped on his head. Just at every turn in his life that we see the story, it is just bad news after bad news after bad news. And it's sort of astonishingly depressing once the movie's over and you reflect on his character arc. And I did arc in air quotes because his arc is, he starts off as a very sad, pathetic dude, and by the end you're like, wow, this guy's life sucked. And he was just a lonely, pathetic loser. And it sounds like I'm piling it on, but I'm not. And I can't go into too much of why that is the case without going into heavy spoilers. So let me make sure I got everything before I get into spoilers. Okay, before I get into spoilers, and the biggest thing about this movie, which is Gosling's character, I will say overall, the movie is very boring. I know I hinted at that before, but it's not boring in a bad way. It's not so boring you want to shut the movie off. It's boring in like a almost sort of cathartic state. It's like wasting your time in an MMO or something. You feel like you're being productive because you're watching a story unfold and you're watching characters interact in a meaningful way, and they're trying to progress to an end goal, but you're dealing with mostly characters that are either very subdued and stunted by a society that oppresses them, or robots that are designed to be emotionless that sort of eventually break out of that mold. Replicant, not robot, sorry. Or Harrison Ford that is old and tired. Jared Leto that's just trying to be a calm maniac he never has an outburst. He just very calmly delivers his crazy philosophies because that's how you play mad geniuses in the future. They're just very calm about their psychotic tendencies. That's how you do that character, Jared Leto. Or an AI that, is AI and is just programmed to act the way she's programming. So there's not a lot of error behind those movements. Sterile environments, which once again isn't bad. It's really done really well. But even in the junkier environments, it's still it's just desolate and empty. It's a wasteland. The metal warehouse is a wasteland. The ruins of Bladerunner 1 City is just orange, dusty ruins. So, I don't know. It's, I know I said all this, and I can't really say it was a detracting factor. For me, at least. I mean, you may watch and be bored, but there was something about it that kept me wanting to watch. And I was never on the edge of my seat, but there was still something that was just kept pulling me back in. But anyway, I just had to get that out of the way. Overall, there's no wow moments in this movie. It's very clinical and boring on the surface. And even the story, the way it resolves, it didn't really pack a punch or anything. But actually, it's the detective bits of it that kept me watching. Those are really interesting. And it sort of fades out in the last half, but it's still there for a while. And that kept me in. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and say right now, I would give this movie a recommended watch before I get into spoilers. But for now, let's get into spoilers and talk about why this is one of the most depressing characters I've seen in a movie in a while.
44, 28 is where spoilers end, so why wait?
Okay. So, I, of course, am going to go into story details here because it'll help explain the events that happened to Gosling and why his character is so depressing. So the first big punch of it is, of course, Ryan Gosling's AI girlfriend. They have a lot of scenes together where they talk, and she's like telling him he's special, and she even we're into spoilers, so whatever. She even hires a hooker at some point to come home and have sex with Gosling, and she, the AI girl, Joy is her name. She like lines up her hologram with the hooker, so it's like Gosling is having sex with Joy. So, which is also weird. Could be sweet depending on your maniac mind state levels. So the movie really drives home that they're in like with each other. And at some point, Gosling is on the run from the law, and he buys a portable. It's pretty much a portable computer that can carry Joy on it, and Joy says, "Wipe me from all the records from your home, because people are going to come investigate your home. They're going to hear all the conversations we've had and all the secrets you've been telling me. So wipe me from the memory of your home computer system and just carry me on your portable drive." Eventually he does it, and then the story leads them to ruins of Bladerunner 1 city. Small footnote here. A part of the story has evil genius's assistant going after Gosling because they know Gosling has information they want. So they track Gosling to the old city, and there's a conversation between Harrison Ford and Ryan Gosling, and eventually the genius's assistant attacks the building they're in. Everything's blowing up, everyone gets shot and stuff, so they're all weak. They break in and they steal Harrison Ford, which was weird to me. I don't think anybody knew who he was. There was no like prompt that came up on anybody's computer screen when Gosling was in the area that like Gosling is with Harrison Ford, and Harrison Ford was a key character in Blade Runner 1, so abduct him. They they knock out both Harrison Ford and Gosling, and they take Harrison Ford and leave Gosling, which is weird. But anyway, that big plot discrepancy is a minor point, what I'm getting at here. Gosling is on the ground, shot, fighting the assistant. The assistant hates Gosling at this point because he's exhibiting signs of humanity. She's pissed off at that. So, she's like going down and getting ready to like hurt Ryan Gosling, and the AI Joy's like, "Don't do it. Don't shoot him. He's innocent." And she sees, Joy sees the thumb drive on the ground, and she says, "I hope you liked using our product," because the AI is actually a product of evil genius. So she goes down to smash the thumb drive with her shoe, and as she's doing that, Joy leaps down to try to get to Gosling, and she's like, "I love you," and then she just fades from existence because she's an AI. So Gosling's all sad about that, and then like, I don't know, a couple scenes later, you see him walking through the streets, and he's all sad, and it's raining, and he stops in front of this huge advertisement for Joy. And it's like, she can tell you everything you need to get you through your day. She's exactly what you need to hear. And there's a point where she tells Ryan Gosling, "You're unique and you're special. You need a name." And it's a big deal. She's like, you should be called Joe. That should be your name. You shouldn't be K. You shouldn't be agent number 203048. Or whatever. So she names him Joe. And then, like, as part of the advertisement, she's like, she'll make you feel more than just a Joe, or whatever. They even name drop in there. And it's like, wow, that sucks. And this guy's like super into this AI, and he should have known that she was just AI and then she was designed to be like that anyway. So his love life has been a awkward, weird lie. That story element encompasses a lot of the movie. Actually, it's like happening all throughout. But the main plot, I'll touch on briefly. I don't want to give the whole thing away, but I'm giving enough away. But the points I'll touch on will just play into his character. The main gist of the plot is he finds out that, early on in the movie, he finds out that a replicant has given birth. And replicants are essentially robots, so it's like, how in the world did that happen? So that's his journey. He's trying to find out. Eventually, he finds out that the replicant that gave birth to a kid, and then there was a clone of that child that was created. And I believe it's ambiguous when that's first introduced. One is a boy and one is a girl. So one of them is a real child and one of them is a clone of the child. And this whole time, every clue Gosling picks up like triggers a flashback in his mind. So we're led to believe, and he's led to believe, that he was the child of the replicant. So he's who he's been searching for this whole time. He is the key to replicant and human evolution that evil genius is after. So he gets new drive in his life because he is more than just a replicant. He is actually unique. He is birthed from a replicant. There are scenes throughout with his boss where she's just there to sort of awkwardly and unintentionally beat in that he is a replicant and she is human. Like they have the typical scene where a soul is brought into question. And it's sort of awkwardly brought into question because when they first start investigating this, they think it's a human kid. That this birth was some sort of surrogate birth of a human kid, and the kid needed to be eliminated. And Gosling comes back after finding out that he's probably the offspring, and he tells his boss, "Yeah, I killed the kid. He was really weird this time." And she's like, "What are you talking about? You kill people all the time." And he's like, "I've never killed somebody with a soul before." And then it just stares back and forth for a couple seconds, and at some point, a conversation happens, and she's like, "Well, you've done pretty well without one." And he's like, "Without what?" And she's like, "A soul." And it's like, damn, man, you don't gotta play Gosling like that. He's acting pretty human. You don't gotta do him dirty like that. And then he does this stare into the camera thing. And I think she's also the one that delivers the line that comes back that making a sacrifice for a greater good is what is truly evocative of a human. The scenes happen, a lot of just story building and world building, fill in the gaps, and after the abduction in Old City, a rebel group of replicants rescues Gosling. They bring him back, and it is revealed that Gosling is actually the clone of the offspring. So he isn't really unique. He's just a clone of somebody who was unique. And he was there to, I guess, mislead or play a part in a plan. His essential sister, even though it's a clone, she was the real unique one, and she's in hiding, waiting for the perfect time to strike against the evil mastermind so they can be free and not hunted down to extinction, pretty much. So he's like, "Oh, so I'm useless. I'm not some unique being that is going to change the world. My role is to be a distraction. My whole existence is a distraction so the real unique thing can stay in hiding." That's sick. That's super cool. And at this point, Evil Genius has had a meeting with Harrison Ford, and he's trying to get information about how the replicant conception happened, because the replicant that actually gave birth was Harrison Ford's girlfriend in the first movie. I've forgotten all their names, so I hope you know who I'm talking about. Harrison Ford is talking, and evil genius. I'll just start calling him Jared Leto too, since I'm calling all the other actors by their names. Jared Leto is like, well, I know you worked with people, and eventually one of those people will talk. So you're going to lead me to these people, and I have ways to make you talk, since you're not talking by choice. So they go to, he tells assistant to ship off Harrison Ford to some out of state, bring him past the lines of jurisdiction, pretty much. So assistant is carting him away. Gosling has just discovered that his whole existence has just been a distraction, so somebody who's actually important can live. His AI girlfriend has died at this time. He sees the advertisement for his AI girlfriend touting that she can be what she was for him to anybody, thus making his love life incredibly pointless and not unique. Anybody can get literally exactly what he had. And so he's like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to go save Harrison Ford. So my clone-ish sister, I don't even know how to describe that relationship. It's probably still brother and sister, even if you're a clone of your sister. You're a super brother. You're a super sibling at that point, if you're a clone of your sibling. What? What did I just say? Anyway, so he goes off to track Harrison. Not even track. He just knows where Harrison Ford is. That was a weird point now that I think about it. And anyway, he goes to shoot down the transport ship that assistant and Harrison Ford are in to save Harrison Ford. He gets into a battle to the death with replicant assistant. It's replicant versus replicant. They do get out. She stabs Gosling in his replicant guts, and she thinks she's won. She does the stupid villain thing of leaving somebody mortally wounded when you are entirely intended on killing them. She says, I'm the better one, and then she gives him a big old kiss because she's still obsessed with him. She leaves him, and she doesn't... Okay, side point here. If you're going to do this stupid villain thing of not making sure you've killed who you're trying to kill, at least wound them mortally and, like, have the bad guy say, suffer, or something. Like, they are knowingly leaving them alive. Like, I want you to feel this pain till you die. Make him say something like that instead of just stabbing him and be like, I win, and then walk away because he haven't won. Because you know what's going to happen? Ryan Gosling is going to jump out of the water like a shark and drown you. Because, yeah, their ships crash in, like, the other side of a dam, and they slowly sink into the water as their wrecked ship sinks into the water, and they're fighting on some concrete shore. Anyway, so Ryan Gosling is mortally wounded, and he saves Harrison Ford, and he goes to where his super sibling, Ryan Gosling goes to where his super sibling is, because that's Harrison Ford's daughter. And they get to the area, and Harrison Ford looks at Gosling, and he's like, are you okay? Because clearly Gosling's not. He's a bloody mess, and he got stabbed in the gut. And he's like, yeah, I'm fine. Go see your daughter. And Harrison Ford just quietly walks inside, and Gosling lays down on the stairs and just looks up into the sky, and he bleeds out, and he dies, I guess. Even though earlier in the movie, at the beginning of the movie, right after his fight with Batista, he gets, like, cut open and shot. Then he's back home, and his girlfriend's like, hey, you got hurt at work today. And he's like, oh, that's no big deal. I'll glue it up. And so he uses, like, literal replicant glue to stitch his body up. And he's like, I'm good as new. So, like, when Harrison Ford said, are you okay? He should have said, can we go get some glue? And he would have been fine. But instead, he follows the stupid advice that freaking dumb person told him, that making a sacrifice for the greater good is what makes a human a human. Like, that's so extraneous. Why would you listen to that? If any human was in that scenario, they'd be like, can we go to the hospital first? Yeah, I'll drop you off here. You can talk to your daughter, and I'm going to go to the hospital. Or better yet, bring your daughter out. You two can talk in the car, and you can drive me to the hospital so I don't die. They're in the future. He could have driven to the hospital and put Harrison Ford in the car on autopilot. All right? So here you go. Go have fun with your daughter. I'm gonna not die. Any human in that scenario would have opted to say, I need medical attention. But we'll get to your daughter soon. I just don't want to die. I've done 20 good things in a row here that lead to a good end. I would like to not die. But no, the movie's pushing the message of sacrificing yourself for the greater good is what makes you human. So in the end, this is Replicant Gosling's story. He lives his whole life as a new model replicant, killing older model replicants. He finds out that he is the offspring of older model replicants. So that's a little gut punch right there. He's essentially been killing his own kind, because they're essentially different species, newer models and older models. He's in a committed relationship with with essentially Alexa from Google. He has one high point in his life where he thinks he's some miraculous offspring, and then that's taken out from under him when he discovers his whole life is just a distraction. And then he dies pointlessly, sacrificing himself, in quotes, for the greater good, in quotes, that he'll never see. Not to mention, I didn't touch on this, but for some reason replicants are just super hated by society in general. They call them, like regular people call them skin jobs and stuff, and everyone's throwing stuff at him and spitting on him. When he goes home in the first part of the movie, there's just like graffiti on his door. It's like, get out of our block, skin job. So everybody hates him. It's just, it's oddly layered on, which is why I thought this movie may have had more writers. I thought maybe the director went up to writer one and he's like, hey, I don't want our main character to be like a superhero. Let's make sure that he has like a depressing moment where he's humanized, we bring him down. And writer one's like, okay, I got it. And then like a month later, director goes to writer two and he's like, hey, did we ever get that depressing human moment for our main character to make sure that he's brought down a couple notches so people can relate to him? And writer two is like, yes, sir, I'll get right on that. And then he goes and writer one makes the scene where he's in love with a generic AI, and then writer two is like, okay, how about his whole life is pointless? And then director goes to writer three and he's like, oh, before I forget, did you get the depressing part of our character? I don't want him to be just like a super cool robot. I want him to have like a depressing humanity part to him. And writer three is like, what? I mean, sure. Yeah, I'll do that right away. And then they write the part where he sacrifices himself, in quotes, for the greater good. Just choosing to let himself die. I don't know. It's very strange. It's very strange just how pathetic this character is. And that's not even mentioning the meta aspect of it, where Harrison Ford becomes the star of the show once he's introduced. Like, so much screen time is on Harrison Ford, and the story becomes about him being reunited with his daughter. It's not about Gosling's detective trial anymore. As soon as Harrison is introduced to the movie, Gosling's detective work is done, and then it's Harrison Ford. It's the Harrison Ford show. So the movie gets stolen from Gosling. So on a meta aspect, it's even depressing. Anyway, that's that. I don't know. Is it weird that was my biggest takeaway from the movie? That Gosling's character was just so damn pathetic? I don't know. Maybe that was the intent. At any rate, welcome back. What a great movie. I sort of brought it up before, but awkward recommendation for me, because overall it was a very boring movie, but it was still pretty engaging. I liked the world. I liked seeing more of the world unfold. For a large chunk of the movie, I wanted to see what was going to happen to it, what was going to happen to Gosling's character, what was going to happen to the secrets he was uncovering, and how that was going to resolve. But I brought it up in spoilers a little bit, but very clearly, it's showcased in the trailer a lot. Harrison Ford is introduced in the movie, and as soon as he's introduced in the movie, it sort of becomes the Harrison Ford show, which I didn't like at all, really. In my opinion, he should have had 5 minutes of screen time, if that. Harrison Ford had his own entire movie in Blade Runner 1. He didn't need so much screen time in 2. They could have told a much better story without relying on Blade Runner 1 so much. So that was a pretty big gripe of mine, too. That's probably my biggest gripe. Gosling's character being so pathetic wasn't really a big gripe. It was just weird. It was just weird how pathetic they made him. But Harrison Ford taking over the show when he was introduced was kind of irritating to me. Especially since Harrison Ford doesn't care anymore. He's not going to give it his all in acting. He was Han Solo. What does he care? He doesn't have to act ever again. So he's the perfect tired old man. But his tired old manness bleeds through a little too much, and it bled through a little too much in here. He acts like he doesn't care, because in reality he doesn't care. But, wow, okay, I don't want to get off on that tangent. But Harrison Ford taking over the show sucked. Aside from that, I'm just going to recommend it. You know what? I'm just going to recommend it. Watch the movie.